This is a test for Concord TV. This is just an audio test before we turn on the live. Please hold. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Good afternoon. This is Kathleen Murphy. I'm the interim superintendent for the Concord School District, and I welcome everyone to our presentation on our plan for returning to school for our students, and appreciate the chance to have this live Microsoft Team link for you this evening so that we can present our plan as well as provide some opportunity for you to ask questions as well as make comments. So let me begin first by thanking everyone for their patience on Tuesday. We did have some technical difficulties, and I apologize for that. We exceeded the limits of the Microsoft tool platform that we were using, and as a result caused some technical difficulties for us. So I apologize for those families that tried to get in and were not able to, and the fact that we were unable to use the chat feature. However, we feel we've fixed that problem. We have gone to Microsoft Live, which allows for up to 1,000 participants in tonight, as well as we have a Q&A feature, which you can post questions as well as comments this evening. We will do our presentation and then we will address your comments and questions. We will also be taking phone calls for folks that have phoned in, and those will be calls that we will take from a verbal point of view. So welcome, and we look forward to it. Joining us tonight is Assistant Superintendent Donna Paley, our Facilities Director Matt Cashman. We also have some technical support from our Business Administrator Jack Dunn, and Lyndon Jackett will be on the call also to help with some of the comments and questions that come in. Before I begin tonight, though, I want to remind you again, if you have comments or questions, please use our Q&A, and up on you'll be able to see if you're on tonight on our platform, you'll see the Q&A and how to use that, and also how you can call in with the telephone number and the conference ID number so that we can hear from you. We ask that if you're making some verbal comments tonight and sharing some thoughts and suggestions as well as questions, that you keep those to 2 minutes. We're trying to hear from all of our families, all of our elementary families for this first hour. And so I would ask that you keep it to 2 minutes and limit the questions to one question so that we have an opportunity to hear from everyone. The format for this evening is very brief. Presentation on our plan. We hope to keep that within a 15-minute time block and then open it up to the questions and answers. So I think we can get started. If I could go to the first slide, I'll begin and we'll hear from a few other folks. This information is available on
Pardon me, meeting presentators. I'm sorry to interrupt, but people cannot hear anything. I'm on the call. I can't hear you. I can't hear anyone. I'm getting chat messages that people cannot hear anything.
Lyndon, can you hear me?
And I can't either.
Yeah. Okay. Hold. Just pause for a second.
So I'd like to continue, if I could, to the three models that we have looked at in our plan. The first one is a full in-person model. This one is particularly difficult for us if we are to follow the CCD guidelines. Classroom space accommodations restrict our ability to maintain proper physical distancing. We will continue to have a 6-foot physical distancing should we return to school. Our classrooms and the number of students in a classroom restrict us from being able to do that. We've had many suggestions from folks saying, well, perhaps you could do some off-campus sites. And we looked at that. We actually talked to some folks in the community who had space available. There's several issues with that, and that is around our supervision of those sites, staffing those sites, as well as nursing and support services, so that we found that having off-campus sites would be impractical. But we also know that given the number, based on our surveys again, the number of students opting for full remote learning will help to give us an idea about how many students might be able to return into the buildings during the day. If we could go to the next slide, please. The second model that we looked at is the full remote. Many of you are familiar with this. This was the plan that was used when Governor Sununu proclaimed his executive order indicating that we all had to go to remote learning. However, we learned a great deal from remote learning. We know that after talking and getting feedback from our families and students that we needed to be more structured. Parents wanted and students wanted more face-to-face instruction. So that's been very important for us. The other factor is that students indicated that they wanted a chance during remote learning to be able to interact with their peers. And that was really important for their social and emotional development. We also wanted to increase the amount of communication between our teachers and students and families. So that is part of our plan should we go to full remote. Obviously, we want to continue to give students plenty of feedback and monitor. One of the things that is important to us is monitoring student attendance and ensuring that those kids and youngsters that are at risk that perhaps are not fully engaged, that we make every attempt to make sure that they are engaged. The last model that we looked at, which we refer to as our hybrid, our combination model. Could I have the next slide, please? This allows us to have face-to-face in school with student and teachers. And the hybrid model would divide our students into two groups. So if you have a classroom, let's talk about a classroom of 20 students. Average in Concord runs anywhere from 18 to 22, 23 students. So if you take an average class of 20 and you create two groups, an A group and a B group, and the A group would attend on Mondays and Thursdays, and the B group would attend on Tuesdays and Fridays. We've had a lot of questions around why not do Monday, Tuesday for Group A and Thursday and Friday for Group B. The reason that it was suggested that we go to the model that we're presenting is because we didn't want to wait for one group to have to wait until Thursday before their first face-to-face with teachers. So we felt that that having the Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday schedule would get all of our youngsters into school with their teachers sooner. We also know that the days that the students are not with their teachers, they will be able to take materials home with them for the work the next day when they have a day at home that is remote. And we have a lot of questions about what will happen on that day. So on Monday, they meet with their teacher. On Tuesday, it's a remote day. This is a day where they have activities. They may have the work with their librarian, their computer teacher, could be some of their integrated arts. We have a science program here in the district that will provide additional science activities, along with assignments and projects that the teacher will assign to them for the next day, for that next day, which is a Tuesday. Wednesday for the students, they will all be participating. This will be all remote on Wednesday. Students will participate in activities that are assigned to them, but it'll also include a lot of small group instruction, students that need additional help, whether it's in reading or math, and perhaps offline assignments. This is also a wonderful opportunity. Our staff will have their advisories, as you see in the middle and high school, along with class meetings in the elementary school. We hear a lot from parents who are worried about some of their youngsters who have challenges relative to their learning, and we are working so that we can bring those youngsters in to give them additional support, more time. In addition to their A or B day, they would also have days that they would come in and meet with their specialized teacher to provide more instruction. And last, a question we often get is, how will I know which group I'm in? And our building principals will be assigning Group A or Group B. So I'm going to slide Matt. Matt, would you like to? I'm sorry, I got one more to do before I assign it to Matt. In the classroom, students and staff will be required to wear masks while in the building. That's a recommendation that we've received from the folks that provide us with medical advice, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but we are going to be asking that students wear masks as well as the teachers. But we also recognize that some students, that will be difficult for them, especially our preschool and primary age youngsters. They will not be asked to wear masks all day. We have consulted with our doctor from the hospital, Dr. Noble, who is an infectious disease doctor in charge of that department at Concord, and has indicated to us that the very young students, our preschool primary age, those are youngsters, kindergarten, grades 1 and 2, will not be asked to wear them. However, we are going to ask them to wear them on the buses and when entering and exiting the classroom, if they're out in the hallways or walking to the bathroom or whatever. We will be providing mask breaks throughout the day for the youngsters. And one thing we've asked the parents is, if when your child is coming to school, that you would help them get ready for school by practice wearing masks. And I know a lot of you are already doing that every day when the students are out and about in the community. So with that, now I can turn it over to Matt Cashman. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Kathleen. So can you go back one slide, Jack? So for the combination hybrid model to continue, we're looking at class sizes of anywhere from 8 to 12 students, maintaining 6-foot distances. We'll be assigning permanent seats, and we're going to limit the amount of materials and supplies shared. We're going to also work in each school to create hallways to provide as little mixing of groups as possible. And we're really going to try to encourage, while the weather's good, outside spaces. We're going to have 4 tents at every school to start, and we don't plan on holding any large group meetings or events. With that, I'll go to the next slide.
So we have looked at the school calendar, given the fact that we're asking our teachers to work either in the classroom and also do remote learning on those off days. as well as presenting activities for Wednesday, we felt that our teachers needed more time for preparation. And at this point, we will be requesting an extension to the school calendar with the first day beginning September 8th for students. One more thing that we're often asked by our families is what's the matrix? What is it that is going to indicate to you the reasons to whether we have face-to-face in classrooms, whether we go to remote? What are those things that would drive that decision? And so we listed some things here that we are on. We review almost every day, and that's the status of COVID-19 here in our community, as well as in the state. We seek medical guidance, and I mentioned that we meet weekly with Dr. Noble from the Concord Hospital. We also are our nurses are in communication with Dr. Chan, who is in public health, as well as guidance from the CDC. That all of those guidelines are given to us to help us make those decisions. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Donna Polly, who's going to talk about social emotional learning.
Hello. We know that given what we've all been through, what our children have been experiencing, the disruptions in their world, that the first weeks of school, and that's true whether they're in person or remote, we're going to be heavily focused on their social emotional well-being. We definitely will be working to, and the staff, the teachers will be working to develop relationships with their students, develop their classroom community, and make sure that the kids work together in those first weeks to learn expectations, some old, some new, that will help for going forward. Back to school events will be happening in some remote and some in person, and they're being developed at the building levels. I know we had some questions about kindergarten screening. Our hearts go out to those new parents who haven't been in our schools before. They're trying to get their brains wrapped around kindergarten and what that looks like and what their school building looks like. And I want to assure you that our principals are working on in-person and small groups or even individual tours and opportunities in their buildings, and you'll hear more about that directly from those principals. And of course, we'll be monitoring our students closely for any additional support and services they require. Our student services an area, as Superintendent Murphy said, our families who have students with IEPs, our families of students who are learning English, those who receive Title I services, all of course want to make sure, and we want to make sure that our students receive those services. And so we will have opportunities both remotely and in person to offer those. At this point, we are not planning to offer in-home services. We're working very closely as Ms. Murphy said, with Dr. Noble around appropriate PPE. Mr. Cashman is busy with plexiglass and making sure petitions are put appropriately where they need to be. Meetings with parents will be held remotely. We continue to use our translation services. We connect both with our counselors in the district and with our folks who are outside and our partners in the community. We are in, I think, a very strong place with technology. Our students already had, for the most part, one-to-one devices, and we've purchased additional devices, new devices for some of our staff and students. We will have a schedule of times and days for technology pickups as we did back in the spring. We have a help desk that worked both remotely and in person all through the spring, actually into the summer, and they'll be available in the fall to support. We know our parents, our families are looking for more support with technology, and we're going to be offering more training as well late in the summer and into the fall. And we continue to support our families around their need for internet connectivity. We just want you to know that our students will be participating if possible in statewide assessments. Grades 4 to 8 will take a fall screening assessment in math and language arts, each for 30 minutes. And juniors will take the SAT in the school in the fall. This will be an in-person assessment. And so we'll hear more from the College Board, which manages that program. We did have a question about seniors. Seniors did not take it. They're not going to take it in school this year. If they need to take the SAT, they would take it through the normal weekend sessions that are offered.
I got it. So we've had a lot of questions around the technical center, the regional technical center, and as many of you know, we work with 9 schools who send youngsters to the technical center. The plan right now is to open that technical center every day to support all the students who come in from the districts, sending districts, as well as our students in Concord. One of the questions that has been posed to us is we have a set of protocols in the Concord district, wearing masks, social distancing, washing hands. And so those same protocols that exist in Concord, that will be the expectation for those youngsters who are coming in from our sending schools. So I want to be clear about that. I mean, we set the protocol and we're expecting people to follow those and the students to follow those protocols, as well as the staff. Transportation continues to be a challenge and we're working on that. But you know, we know that 100% remote learning at the technical center is a struggle for almost every program there, where so much of the focus is hands-on learning. Matt, you want to jump in and do some screening?
Sure. So next we're talking about screening procedures at home. We're going to ask parents and guardians to screen their children for risk factors. We as a district will provide the checklist. Thermometers will be available, the no-touch thermometers, to any family in need. Any child with a temperature of 100 degrees or above must remain at home, and then we'll work with them to participate in remote learning. Any student exposed to COVID-19, they must stay at home and follow guidelines before they return. Next slide. So we have screening procedures at school. Every staff and student will be screened before entering the building. Each school will have several no-touch thermometers to accommodate everybody coming in. Again, anyone with a temperature of 100 degrees or above must return home. Next screen. As always, we encourage hand washing and sanitizing. Students will be encouraged when entering the building, if they touch someone else's hands or face, using the bathroom, at snack and lunch times, returning from the playground. Those will all be times all the staff will encourage hand washing and sanitizing. We'll also have sanitizing pump stations mounted on the wall in every single classroom in the district. Next slide. We have some cleaning and disinfecting protocol. Every single day, classrooms will be cleaned. On Wednesdays, we're going to do a deep disinfecting clean. We have outfitted all of our schools with several backups of electrostatic sprayers. We will have a spray bottle with disinfectant in every single classroom with a rag. We're also encouraging middle and high school students to wipe down their desks before leaving the class. Again, we'll have the hand sanitizers mounted on the classroom wall, and our shift schedules for custodians will be adjusted based on the model we adopt. Next slide. So we have 3 disinfectants that are approved by the CDC that we use in Concord School District. They're listed right here: Hyperfect 256, Firotabs, and Contact 256. We will have safety data sheets for all of these products, not only on our website, but at the school themselves, and we'll make those available to anyone who would like to review them. As far as visitors and meetings, visitors and vendors will not be allowed to enter the building unless it's an emergency situation. Parent meetings will be held remotely, and volunteers, at least for the start, will be not working in our buildings. Next slide. The next 3 slides are going to cover 3 separate scenarios with protocols attached. One is protocols for response to COVID-like symptoms at school. The next slide is a protocol for if there is a case of a COVID diagnosis. And the third slide, Jack, if you want to move through these, is if the protocol, if an individual is confirmed with COVID. It's very specific guidelines. We've been working with our medical personnel, our nurses, and we're continually reviewing this internally with everyone. When an individual in the school is confirmed with COVID-19, we have to wait up to 10 days to pass since it first appeared, and at least 24 hours have passed since the fever or the individual is off fever reducing meds and symptoms have improved. Last, we want to talk about air handling and filtration. About 3 years ago, the board adopted the plan that we set forward to change all air filters in all of our schools. That's over 1,000 filters in all of our schools, as well as preventive maintenance. This is done by a third-party outside contractor. We will maximize the airflow into all of our schools by bringing in 100% outside air. We have been working with our HVAC experts from Siemens, Trane, and mechanical engineers on record who have designed these air systems in all of our schools. We're also going to encourage all windows to be open when possible. Next slide. Donna, I think that's you.
Yes, I am back. Thank you. So our food service will see some changes. We will not put large groups, as we've said, together. So we won't be using our cafeteria for large groups. It may be used for very small groups. Otherwise, students will eat outside, which would be our preference if it's a nice day, or in other spaces, including classrooms. Their breakfast and lunch will be provided as grab and go. And we're waiting for waivers from both the federal and state government around details of the continued work on delivering food into the community that we had in the past in the spring. And certainly all the protocols necessary will be followed by food service staff.
So we were very fortunate in the survey. Parents indicated a willingness to help us with transportation, in that they would be willing, should we open, to drive their youngsters to school and pick up. This was an incredible help to us. The reason for that is we have 77 passenger buses, and based on the requirements around social distancing, the fact that we can get 1 student per seat, although siblings can sit together, and doing a zigzag approach in terms of giving us that spacing, we could only put 26 youngsters on a school bus. Well, that certainly is below the numbers that we normally would carry each day. So the help from the parents was greatly appreciated. But we will require that masks and face coverings be used on the bus, and they will be required. When weather permitting, we will keep the windows open so that fresh air is always coming into the buses. The buses will be cleaned and sanitized daily and also between runs. So when we finish the high school run and we're going to pick up middle school youngsters, those buses will be wiped down by our drivers. The one piece that we have decided not to do this year, at least for the time being, will be that we will have no field trips leaving the city and that require busing. Now, if a youngster has a walking trip, certainly that will be acceptable, but right now, no field trips. Again, I think we mentioned some of the folks that have been helping us with this. Dr. James Noble has been a great help to us from over at the hospital. I can't thank the staff, our leadership team in the buildings who have been helping us with the development of this and the development of the plan, as well as they're working on their plans at each individual building. Our school nurses have been a great help. They meet with Dr. Chan and give us the latest advice. And again, you know, this pandemic, it changes every day. It's an evolving situation. So it's important that we stay on top of it. We also have a communication plan, and obviously Tuesday night and tonight we're part of that plan, ensuring that our families in the community find out about what we're doing, listen to some of the information, and help us as we try to get our youngsters back to school. Everybody wants the youngsters back. The teachers want to see their students. I know the families are anxious for learning to resume for their children. So our goal is to do that. We love the kids and we want them back. So we'll work with you to get the information out that we need. One other thing that I didn't mention early on, but I want to let you know that members of the school board are on the call tonight. They were also on the call on Tuesday night, listening to your comments. We'll go through the chat and the question and answers in a minute, but they are listening because on Monday, August 3rd, the board will hear public input during the open mic time that's built into the agenda. And they are looking to make a decision. And the reason that we want to make a decision is that, or they want to make the decision, is that we know that families have a lot of decisions to make around how to balance home, family life, and school life. So those are tough decisions. We get that. And these are not easy times for anyone, but the sooner we can make those decisions and give you the plan, then we think that that will benefit you all. Last but not least, I think, is a piece on athletics at the high school as well as at the middle school. You know, we're still waiting for some further NHIA recommendations, but again, there's another situation that changes constantly. Just today, we find out that NHIAA has put off all contact sports practices until September 8th. They haven't even set the dates for the first game, so they're holding off a little bit. We do have some activity going on right now, but we are following all the protocols, daily screening of our students. Coaches and are wearing masks and trying to keep that social distancing the best they can. So athletics is happening now, and obviously we hear loud and clear the desire of the students to get back into the field and in competition. We just have to wait and make sure that they're safe. I think I mentioned next steps about the board meeting on August 3rd, and then the last sheet that's in this packet. And by the way, this PowerPoint is also posted on the district website under Return to School 2020. So these are some great resources. These are things that we use that we wanted to share with you. So without any further ado, we'd like to begin to look at the questions. So Donna, do you want to?
Okay, so we're going to alternate between folks who are on the phone who want to comment or ask a question, and those of you who've put them in the chat. So we'll do 2 phone calls and then come to the 2 questions, and Jack's going to moderate that.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to call the last 4 digits of the phone number and then let you ask your question. First one ending in 3271. To unmute, you need to hit *6 because we have muted everybody so you didn't have any background noise. Once you hit *6, you can go ahead and ask your question. Again, phone number ending in 3271, area code 314.
No question from that number.
Great, thank you. Next number, last 4, 7356, area code 603. Please hit *6 and ask your question. All right, I'm going to move on to the next one. Because I didn't get an answer from that one, I'm trying to have two that actually ask something. 6670, area code 603. Again, last four digits of the phone is 6670 in the 603 area code. If you hit *6, that will unmute you and you can ask your question. All right, I'm going to move on to the next one. Last four digits of the phone, 6352, area code 603. Do you have any question? If so, hit *6, unmute yourself and ask your question. Yeah, I only. All right, with no answer there, I'm going to turn it back over to Donna and let her do some online questions.
Okay, we have a question. It's going to be for Matt Cashman to answer. Are the HVAC systems at the schools going to be checked like the ones at the nursing homes are right now, as they think that's causing the spread?
I guess to answer that initially, I'd want to know how are they being checked at nursing homes. I know that we talked with our medical consultant, Dr. Noble, today. I told him our plan, which was to bring in 100% outside air into all of our classrooms and our schools. We are working with our two mechanical contractors, one to clean and exchange all of the filters and every single one of our systems. It's over 1,000 filters. We're also encouraging the use of opening windows, and we're also going back to the engineers of record, and we've had conversations with them. So far, so good. But we will report anything out that we come up with if it's contrary to what we just said.
Thanks, Matt. Second question, if teachers or staff get COVID at school, are they going to be covered for sick time and medical expenses?
Thank you for that question. Our staff has medical coverage with their employment, and they also have built into their contract time, sick time. We work with our teachers associations, unions, to talk about all of the working conditions that will affect the return to school. So thanks, that was a great question.
Mr. Hildum has a comment and some questions I'm going to read. I can appreciate the difficulty of having to come up with a plan that satisfies such a wide breadth of thoughts and opinions. Obviously, no decision will satisfy everyone. That being said, it feels like you have adequately addressed the concerns of one subset of the population that believes the risk of this virus outweighs the risk of our children being kept out of school. They have been offered the opportunity to choose between keeping their children home or sending them in part-time. What is the choice for the other subset of the population, the subset that believe the risk of keeping our kids out of school developmentally, socially greatly outweighs the risk presented by this virus, or the working families, some already in financial turmoil, that will now have to take on the additional financial burden for childcare in order to continue to work and provide for their families? What is preventing these subsets from being offered the same opportunity or choice as the other to choose to send our children to school full-time if we believe this is what's best for our family and our children's well-being? This is a really good question, and it's something we've been grappling with since the beginning of this planning process. I think that Ms. Murphy did speak about some of the concerns based on the advice that we have from specialists that we're working with, and particularly that issue of 6 feet and being able to spread out enough and have a smaller number in the room at a time so that we can do that and not congregate large groups. Those seem to be so clearly provided to us in terms of advice that we have not been able to get past that kind of advice. But we certainly understand the dilemma that we're in here, and we appreciate that comment. We're going to go back to the phones.
Thank you, Donna. Okay, I will go now down to phone number ending in 2173, area code 603. If you have a question, please hit *6 and unmute yourself. I have no question. I'm going to move on to last 4 digits, 3987, area code 603. If you have a question, hit *6 and ask your question, please. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Donna for online questions.
If you vote for hybrid model, what are parents supposed to do with kids the rest of the week they're not in school? And like the previous commenter, we know this is a significant issue for our families. We also know that we've had some conversations with our partners, our child care partners in the community, who are looking at opportunities that they can provide for potential day support for childcare. I know that there are others who are looking to friends, for families, people are calling it potting up with their neighbors or others, and trying to develop some group, collective groups, some faith-based communities that may also be helping out. So we know this is a massive issue for us, and we appreciate the question. Next, if science and frontline doctors are saying cloth masks are useless, why do you enforce it in small children in elementary school? Two parts to that. We worked closely with our medical specialist, and he is quite insistent that cloth masks or any masks are a very important mitigation for this virus. Also, we are not asking our very youngest children, our preschoolers and our very youngest children and K2, to wear masks in school all the time. I'm going to do one more. What will happen when a student or teacher tests positive and or has symptoms in the classroom? Will just the student teacher quarantine, the students sitting nearby, the entire class wing? And Ms. Murphy's going to answer that question for us.
Thanks, Donna. Great question. We hear that question a lot, and we know that we're working very closely with Health and Human Services and the Department of Public Health. That will be the first call. Once we have identified teacher or student, a call will be made to them to seek advice. They already have an active contact tracing organization all set up, ready to go, to be able to come in and help us with that and identifying who the contacts may have been and what that will mean for our students. Based on the recommendations from public health as well as Dr. Noble, we'll make decisions about whether the school it has to go into quarantine, whether the class, and whether just the youngsters around that student or teacher. So that's going to be an individual case-by-case decision. Tough decision, but a decision that we need to have those folks that do this work every day to guide us.
One more, and then I'm going to move over to Jack on the phone. What will the process timing of drop-off and pickup be at Abbott Downing School? As soon as our board it makes that difficult decision about which models we're going to be using, our principals who are already working on this will be communicating directly with parents from each school, directly with parents, about specific processes and procedures and details about this. So know that we'll provide that information to you as soon as we possibly can. All right, so now to Jack.
Okay. Last 4 digits, 7160, area code 603. If you have a question, please hit *6 and unmute yourself and ask your question. All right, I'm going to move on to the next number. Last 4 digits ending 6113, area code 603. If you have a question, please hit *6, unmute yourself, and ask your question. Okay, I'm going to mute myself and move it back to you, Don, on the online.
All right, will we be notified if a student and/or adult tests or has symptoms in our child's classroom, grade, school?
Thank you for the question. Again, we have a protocol set up. I think we quickly went over those, but they're available on our website, so please take a minute to look at them. But we, again, will be working with public health. They will be doing the contact tracing should it need be. But whether it's if a student has been diagnosed or a teacher has been diagnosed with COVID-19, then we will be sending out from my office information to the families in the school. As many of you know, there are HIPAA and FERPA rules that I must follow. I can't be in violation of confidentiality rules, so I do have to be careful. But we will keep you informed if anyone is diagnosed with COVID-19. We know that it's challenging in a school with youngsters. They have ear infections. They have all kinds of different colds and allergies. So that we will be in constant communication with the medical personnel, including our own school nurses and Dr. Noble.
The next question, how do you plan to guarantee my child's safety if schools open? This is an important question for every parent and all of us, and we're always paying close attention to the medical professionals and to the advice that we're getting. We are leaning, I know this question was asked before Mr. Cashman made his presentation, so I'm hoping some of those questions were answered, but there's of course no 100% guarantee wherever we are, home or at school, but we are taking a conservative approach to each of the guidelines. In other words, some people say 3 feet, but we are saying we're 6 feet. Some people might be going back with large groups of students, but we're going to go back with much smaller groups of students. So I appreciate that question. Has there been any consideration to children and families who are immunocompromised? Yes, this is why our plan includes both an option to come to school in person or to select 100% remote learning. Back to you, Jack.
So just in case it was not working, I've dialed in with the tech line. I hit *6, I've muted it, *6, unmuted it, just in case, because people may just not be asking questions, but it appears to be working to me, but I just wanted to double check just in case there was a concern. So I'm going to work my way down the numbers and go from there. Phone number ending in 8716, area code 603. If you have a question, hit *6 to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hello?
Yep, you've unmuted yourself. Go ahead with your question.
I have a child on an IEP. She actually, she can get as part of her IEP, she needs an aide. What we want to do remote. What can be done for an aide if we have a family member who is an educator? Can the school district have her be the aide if she's qualified?
All right, we have your question. Hold on 1 second. We're just going to have someone answer that for you in a moment.
So if the IEP calls for the child to have an aide, then the school district provides that educational assistant to support that youngster when they're in school. At this time, we are not sending, if you choose to remote and have your child stay at home, then we have not made the decision to have our staff go to folks' homes to provide that support. So the support would have to be the child coming into school with their A, B group, and also remember now they get additional support throughout the week from their special education teacher or speech and language, whatever the need is. So, but
I have more to my question. What if the
Okay.
child's in an at-risk group?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
What if the child's in an at-risk group or a family member at the household and in an at-risk group? Would no exceptions be made? Because I as a parent am very at risk.
Well, I think the best advice I can give you today is that I think that there are many individual cases that we have to deal with. So my best advice is to contact your school, talk to your principal, talk to the case manager, the special education teacher, or Mr. Belmont, who is our special education director here in the district. So I would ask that you call one of those three in order to get some more clarification given your particular circumstances.
Okay. Thank you.
I have one more number. Okay. All right. Phone number ending in 1973, area code 603. Do you have a question? If so, hit *6, unmute yourself and ask your question. Okay, Donna, I'm going to turn it back over to you for the online questions.
A question: while I'm hoping for a full return to the classroom, it appears that the hybrid approach is what's going to take place to start the school year. My question is, what do you consider to be the ideal conditions for Concord to decide to start the school year in the classroom full time?
I think when I showed that screen earlier, the kind of the matrix, the conditions in which we would need to return to full time, by the way, which is everyone's goal here, would be based on the number of COVID cases in Concord as well as statewide, any outbreaks that occur, as well as the advice from public health. I mean, we are taking our guidance there. In terms of reopening our school.
Next question. If working parents will be forced to send kids to daycare for the rest of the week, that kids won't be at school, they'll be exposed to a lot of different people, and all your school safety measures will be useless. Why don't you open schools normally or close it completely? That's a good question, and we've talked about that with our medical expert. And that's why we still will have the screenings in place, the home screening, the screening at school, and the measures that we're taking around masking and distancing, being outside, and the others. We believe that we know that every child, whether they're in daycare or even some older children who play sports and they might play on a different team when they're not at school or go to a family event, we know that there are other contacts that people have. We're trying to minimize the contacts at school, but we know that we can't make it perfect outside. But we do know that parents in our plan right now, parents will be allowed to choose to keep their children completely remote, and we will watch those metrics and open when it's safe to do so. The next question was about kindergarten open house, and I think we did talk about that. The next question, I think if they do remote learning and everybody participates with Google Meets to teach and review, it could work better. There are some advantages to remote learning where everyone is participating remotely, and then the other opportunity to have some in person and some out. But that's a very good point. There are pros and cons to those different models for sure. Each group in Model A or B will have enough space to socially distance each student and adults in the classroom. That is the thinking behind this plan. So we know that some students will stay home. Perhaps 25 or 30% even of our students will be at home in our staff, and that then the remaining students. So we're looking at elementary school. The remaining students will be split into half. And so, for instance, our primary grades, it's very likely that we'll see 7 or 8 students in the classroom, along with their teacher and perhaps an assistant. So we think that's a very manageable number. We're thinking 8 to 12 is the range we would have. Even 7 to 12 would be a range we would have in doing all the measuring and that folks have been in those rooms. We think that's a good spacing. All right, Jack, are there more people on the phone? We just have a minute or two left, and I want people to know that we have your questions and that we are developing a frequently asked questions document that we're going to post on the website. And so we're going to include every question that we have here. If you have a very specific question and you haven't given us a name to respond to, you can also use concordinfo@sau8.org to send us a direct message that we can reply to through email if we don't get to your question.
Okay, so I'm going to hit the last 3 numbers that I show here. The phone number ending in 1883, area code 603. If you have a question, hit *6, please.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
Very good. Go ahead with your question. Thank you.
My question kind of comes from a overall, because in the past the district has not notified parents of things that they should have. How can we trust the district to notify us in a timely manner for something this serious when things like weapons in classrooms and other similar incidents have happened with no information for the parents?
I think I'll take that question. I know that you can talk a lot, but you need to have actions. But I want to assure you, and I hear this every meeting that I have with the Concord School Board, they are about transparency. And they believe that more effort is made to make sure that we communicate with our families. Just the fact that we've held 2 forums here, most school districts either didn't hold anything or had 1. We felt it was important to hold, they wanted 2. They wanted a chance on Monday night for families to be heard. So transparency and communication is a critical goal of the school board. And when the school board sets those kinds of goals, that plays out in every school building as well as in central office. And it's my responsibility as the superintendent of schools to make sure that you know what's going on in your schools. Sometimes it isn't always great news. You know, there might be an incident. But we have to make sure that you understand it and what kinds of responses we're making as a school district. I think it's critical. I was a mom. I'm still a mom, but my kids are older. But I'm a grandma too, and I think it's important that we know that our kids every day go to school and they're safe. And I assure you that as your superintendent, I will make sure that that happens.
Thank you.
Sorry. Okay, thank you.
I know.
Move on to...
I know it was a brash question.
No,
from a long history of.
Listen, I have no problem. That's why we're having this. Don't feel like you have to apologize for a hard question. I think people need to hear that, and I'm happy that I could respond to you in that way, because that was the promise that I made to the board when I came, that I would, as their interim, I would do everything I could to increase our communication with our families, our staff, and the community in general, all of our constituents out there. So I'm glad you asked the question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Okay. Phone number ending in 7514, area code 603. If you have a question, hit *6 and ask your question, please. They are unmuted, so hopefully you have a question. 7514, do you have a question?
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
My daughter's on an IEP, and I know that there's some extra help and stuff like that. Do you know what that might look like? Only because on her other days, I'm a single parent still working, so I don't know how I'm gonna make it by anyway without losing my job. But she's gonna have to go to daycare, so I don't even know how to transport for like short extra help. I guess she's already fallen behind after preschool being closed, so.
That's a great question, and we thought about that and in terms of the planning. So in our plan in this AB model, when the student would have 2 days in, and then in addition, students who have additional needs, IEPs, English learning, Title I needs, other at-risk needs, we are going to look to bring those students potentially in on the other days that aren't their A day or B day. So that you'll be working on with your special education team and through your IEP or your plan. So that will be a possibility to have additional time coming into school.
Okay. All right, I guess that's my question then.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So we are about to switch from this elementary focused parent group to the middle school focus group. So we're going to take just a few minutes break, and then we're going to come back and continue the same conversation. Thank you so much for your participation.
off the screen.
Good evening. This is Kathleen Murphy. I'm the interim superintendent of schools for the school district, and I want to welcome everyone here this evening. Thank you for your patience on Tuesday. Some of you may be returning given some technical glitches. We think we have solved those technical glitches, and we appreciate your patience, very much appreciate your patience. Tonight, joining us in this discussion in our very brief presentation will be Assistant Superintendent Donna Pally and Facilities Director Matt Cashman. Helping us with some technical assistance will be our Business Administrator Jack Dunn and our Administrative Assistant Lyndon Jackett. So thanks to all of those. Also listening tonight will be members of the Concord School Board. They were on the call on Tuesday night as well as this evening, and that's because they wanted to hear your comments, your questions, so that they can better understand what the needs are for the students in Concord. I also have on the call will be our principals and district leaders who may be helpful in answering some of the questions. And I do appreciate all of the work that our district leadership has shown over the last 3 months. This evening, before we begin, you have a chance to put a question into our question and answer spot on the site. So if you have questions, please put them in there. We also are taking questions from phone calls from folks who call in, so we'll be able to do that. We ask that you try to keep your comment and all your questions live, that they be kept to 2 minutes and 1 question. We have a lot of folks. There were, I don't know, 180 people on the last call. And so we want to make sure that we give as much attention as we possibly can to everyone. The format tonight is a very brief presentation and then followed by the Q&A. We'll be on to the middle school section and followed after this hour or so, we will then move on to the high school. So without any further ado, I think I've covered everything. Ask that you keep your mics muted while we present and while we're answering questions and people are asking questions. So thank you, and I'm going to begin. The first screen shows you what the guiding principles are. Those are the basic tenets that drove the formation of our plan. The next slide is surveys. The district conducted 2 surveys, one in June, one in July. We had great response from our families. The first one was over 1,000 and the second one 3,000. So we had, including students and staff. And again, the feedback on those surveys really helped to form the planning that's been done over the last month and a half. In doing so, we have 3 models, models of learning for the students. We have fully remote, and we have a fully in-person model, as well as a hybrid model. The full in-person model is one of the ones that is challenging to us because we are going along, we are supporting the CDC distancing, 6 feet distancing, and to put all students in a classroom with a 6-foot distance. We can't do. We don't have the ability to have that happen in our classrooms, given the class sizes and the size of the classrooms. Some folks have suggested off-site availability. We looked at that, studied that, but we were concerned about several things: supervising of those sites, nursing support, as well as support services at those sites, and it just didn't appear to be practical for us to have youngsters off campus. We think that we can do some, have kids come in and do some face-to-face with our teachers, because we have in our surveys discovered that there are 20 to 25% of our students who may opt for full remote learning. This will help to reduce the class size, and it'll allow us to split the classes up so that we can at least have some time with students and their teachers. The second model is a full remote model. Many of you experienced that last spring. We got great feedback from everyone regarding that model. We know that we need to do more structure, more face-to-face. We want more opportunities for our kids to meet together and meet with their peers, improve and increase regular communication with teachers and students and families. We also want to closely monitor our student attendance and in addition, support those youngsters that are at risk, and particularly those youngsters who may choose not to engage in the learning process. The third model that we proposed was a hybrid model. We were taking those students and dividing them up into two groups. We would have an A group and a B group. On A, they would attend 2 days a week, Monday and Thursday. Group B would attend on Tuesday and Friday. We've been asked about that, why we didn't do a consistent Monday, Tuesday, and a Thursday, Friday. One of the major reasons for this is because we felt that our B group waiting until Thursday to have their first face-to-face with their teachers was a long wait. And then even our Tuesday group who finishes up wouldn't come back until the following Monday. So we split that up. And folks have also asked us, well, what do you do on the day that the youngsters aren't with you? Like if you're in an A group, what happens on Tuesday? And that's the day when students will have activities based on activities from the school librarian, the computer integration teachers. They'll also have activities like their class meetings. They could have their advisories. Students will get small group individual instruction. And also they will have, because they were with their teacher the day before, they will have activities and projects that they can do at home on that day. Wednesday will be a remote day for everyone, and that again will give us an opportunity to have small group instruction and teachers meeting with small groups, as well as on and offline assignments. We want to be very clear about this. This topic has come up a lot. Our youngsters, vulnerable youngsters, are at-risk students, those students that need our additional support. We are creating opportunities for them to have additional support beyond their A or B day, so that they may be spending more time in school with their teachers that are specialized, whether it's speech and language, whether it's a special education teacher or a tutor in reading and math. Many parents say, well, how do we know what group we're going to be in? And that we're leaving in the hands of our building administrators, who will make those assignments and will let families know. One of the things that we've talked about, we are recommending, is that students and staff will be required to wear masks while in the building. We feel that we know and recognize, acknowledge that some students will not be able to wear masks, and we will find appropriate accommodations for them. We also have recognized in discussions with our medical consultant that we know that preschool and our primary age, that's K-1-2 students, will not be able to wear the masks all day, and we're not going to ask them to do that. But we will be asking them to wear them on the buses, as well as when they're entering and exiting the classroom. We'll provide mask breaks throughout the day. And we know that in collaboration and cooperation with our parents, we're going to ask for parents to help us by getting the kids ready for school by practicing wearing their masks. Matt, you want to jump
Yep.
in?
So for the combination hybrid model, our class sizes will be roughly 8 to 12 students while we maintain the 6-foot distancing. We will assign permanent seating while they're in the classrooms. We're going to limit the sharing of materials and supplies. We're also going to work with administration in the schools to create pathways that provide as little mixing of students as possible. We're also excited that we're going to be able to use tents. We have about 4 tents per site, and we're going to encourage outside learning as frequently as we can. We're also not going to hold large group meetings or events. Next slide. I believe Kathleen.
Trying to unmute. There we go. We are suggesting and recommending that we look at the school calendar for the first day of school for our students. Should we return to school, and when we return to either remote learning, whatever the model is that's decided, that we would begin that on Tuesday, September 8th. And that's in part, as many of you know, the governor authorized that teachers be given 3 additional days to prepare whatever model is used to prepare lessons and plans and activities for the students. So given the 2 days that are already built in for our teachers and these 3 days, we are suggesting, and we'll bring this to the board, that we start school on September 8th. Many parents ask, well, what drives the decisions that you make in terms of what model? What if we start out in a remote learning and then we want to go to a full day in all kids? What will drive that? And what will really drive those decisions will be the status of COVID-19 in our community. And in New Hampshire, we're going to be watching to make sure that there's no outbreaks. We will also be receiving constant communication from our medical guidance, including Dr. Noble, who is a infectious disease doc in Concord, at the Concord Hospital, as well as our state doctor that will provide us he works with public health, and he will also be providing us guidance, as well as the state regs and CDC.
We know that there's been a lot of upset and a lot of concern and worries on the part of our staff, of course, students, families. Social emotional well-being is a feature, is a focus of the first weeks of school and really all along the year in school, whether we're in person or remote. Our staff will work on the important aspect of building relationships, building classroom community, introducing both old and new expectations to their students. This will be a significant work for them. Back to school events, remote or in person, will be held. Transition tours, freshman experiences, first year students, new students. We've been asked about kindergarten screening and orientation. Yes, we will be having kindergarten screening and orientation. That will happen in August. You'll be contacted, new kindergarten families, you'll be contacted by your building principal to arrange those. And we'll be monitoring our students for any additional supports and services they need. We have close connections with our community, and we will be community partners in mental health as well, making referrals back and forth. Staff are reaching out to our families to discuss their students' IEP needs. That's ongoing this summer and into the early fall. Our in-school services will be available, special education related services, English language learning, and Title I services, based on the vote that our board will take, hopefully on August 3rd, relative to our models. If we are in school and we have opportunity in school, then we'll provide in-school services. We will provide remote services. We are unable to offer in-home services. We are working with our local placements and charter schools. We will be doing assessments to make sure we understand where our students are. We're looking at additional PPE needs, gowns, shields, gloves for folks who need to be in close contact with individual students. Mr. Cashman and his crew are installing plexiglass partitions in places where that makes sense. Meetings will be held going forward remotely, meetings with parents and related to services. Our technology situation was pretty positive as we began this, because we already have one-to-one devices for most of our students. Our young students, K2, have iPads. Our oldest students have, from 3rd grade up, have Chromebooks, and we have replaced some of those. We've bought new of those. We've bought new devices for our staff members, for many of our staff members. Our help desk, run by our technology department, is available remotely and in person all through the spring, partly into the summer, and they will be up and ready to go in the fall as well to provide services. We've heard that families are interested in technology training, and we'll be providing that later in the summer and in the fall. And we'll also work with our families around their needs for internet connectivity. We know that assessments will be offered in the fall if we are in school. The state is expecting us to participate for students in grades 4 through 8 in a fall screening assessment in math, 30 minutes, and in language arts also 30 minutes, and that our juniors will be taking the SAT at school in the fall. It is not available remotely. It's a paper and pencil assessment.
As many of you know, the Concord School District runs a career and technical center, and we work with our regional partners. Those are 9 schools that send students to Concord to receive career and technical education. This program is extremely successful. And we've been asked, will the protocols that are in place in Concord, will that expectation be the youngsters that come from those 9 schools? And the answer is yes. We intend, those are our protocols. Students attending will be required to follow the hand washing, the mask wearing, and the social distancing. We are planning to keep the technical center open every day in order to accommodate all the schedules that occur in those 9 schools that are sending students. We recognize that transportation is a challenge, and we're still trying to figure that piece of transportation out. We do know one thing. We know that 100% distance learning with the Career and Technical Center was not successful, and that it was critically important that youngsters attend the program because all of the activities are hands-on, and they need to be there with their teachers.
Next, we want to do some screening procedures at home. Parents and guardians will be asked to screen their children for risk factors daily before sending their kids to school. We also, as a district, will provide a checklist. On top of that, we're going to provide thermometers to any families in need. Any child that demonstrates symptoms or 100-degree temperature or above must remain at home. And if a student is exposed to COVID-19, that student must stay at home and follow certain guidelines for return afterwards. Want to talk a little bit about screening procedures at school. Every staff member and student will be screened before entering the building. Each school will have a variety of no-touch thermometers. And again, the same protocol, anyone with a temperature of 100 degrees or higher must return home. And students who may demonstrate that will be returned home in a private vehicle. Next screen. As always, we encourage hand washing and hand sanitizing. We'll do these in cases when kids are entering the building. If they touch another friend, hand or face after using a bathroom, before and after snack and lunchtime, and returning from the playgrounds. We will have sanitizing stations in every classroom. We'll talk a little bit about cleaning and disinfecting protocol. Daily cleaning will occur in every classroom, and then on Wednesdays, where we won't have a whole lot of school activity in the building, we'll do some deep disinfecting. We have plenty of electrostatic sprayers at all schools, and we plan on utilizing them every day of the week. We also will provide every classroom with spray bottles with an approved disinfectant we'll talk about in a minute. We're also encouraging middle school and high school students to wipe down their desks. We will provide the bottles as discussed, and we'll also have a rag in the classroom. And hand sanitizing stations will be mounted, as I said earlier, in every classroom. Our custodial staff will shift their schedules on Wednesdays based on the model we choose. I talked a little bit about the 3 disinfectants that are approved by the CDC. They're listed here: Hyperfect 256, ViroTabs, and Contact 256. I will have the safety data sheets available to anyone. We'll put that on the website, but we'll also have it at the schools. We'll talk a little bit about visitors and meetings and that protocol. Unless it's an emergency, visitors and vendors will not be allowed in the building. We will push to have all parent meetings held remotely. And until such time when we deem it safe, volunteers will not be working in our buildings. The next 3 slides that we're going to talk about are protocols for COVID-like symptoms at school. We're going to also look at protocols in the case of a COVID diagnosis and individual COVID confirmed. And in these slides, I won't read them all to you, but we've worked very closely with our nurses, our healthcare consultants to demonstrate these protocols that you see in front of you. We want to talk just a little bit about when an individual in the school is confirmed with COVID-19. Parents with a suspected or confirmed COVID-19 must stay out of the school until the symptom-based criteria are met. That could be up to 10 days have passed since first symptoms appeared, and at least 24 hours since the last fever, once they're off fever-reducing meds, and also once the symptoms have improved. We'll talk a little bit about air handling and filtration. About 3 years ago, we brought in an outside contractor to change over 1,000 filters in our schools. We have a combination of MERV 8 and MERV 14 filters in our schools. We've also talked with Siemens Technologies, that's our building automation system. We're going to increase the airflow to bring in 100% air into all of our classrooms and to the building. We're also working with the mechanical engineers of record that designed all of our air handling systems, and we're going to be reviewing what our process is and balancing off the recommended protocol. We're also going to be opening windows when possible and if needed.
In terms of food service, things will look a little bit different. We don't want to use our cafeterias to have large groups of students eating. We would like them, if possible. Again, when we say outside, we're talking about in this fall when the weather is warmer. So eating outside, eating in classrooms, eating in other small spaces, and we might have smaller numbers, very much smaller numbers in the cafeteria. The meals will be grab and go. Our work that we did of delivering food into the community last spring will continue. We are, depending on the waivers that we need to receive from the state and federal government, and we're going to ensure the food service staff meets all of the expectations. The food service director met today with Dr. Noble to discuss some of those procedures.
We are encouraging parents to help with the provision of transportation for the youngster each day. And I have to say that based on the last survey that we did, it was incredible the number of parents who indicated that they would help out by driving their youngsters to school or picking up. And so we really appreciate that. The reason for that is we have 77 passenger buses with the physical distancing in place and having one student per seat. Specified, we'll be designating the seat. It will be a permanent seat, and siblings can sit together. But with that in mind, we could only put 26 students on a bus. So that would require that we would do double and triple runs. Then we would impacting the time youngsters got to school. So we really appreciate the transportation volunteering to help us out with that. Just want to let you know that we expect masks to be worn on the buses, as well as one of the ways, and they keep telling us airs and open windows are helpful in the classroom. Well, we'll do that on the buses when the weather permits it. Buses will be cleaned daily by the bus crew, as well as they'll be doing clean down, wipe down of the seats and so forth after each run. One thing that we are not going to allow this year, and we're recommending that it not happen, is that field trips that require busing and youngsters going out of district. We don't, walking trips within the city, that's fine, but no field trips out of town. I think we've mentioned this a couple of times. Much appreciate the work from Dr. Noble, who has been a great help from us over at the Concord Hospital. Also the folks over at the Department of Health and Human Services and Public Health, the Department of Ed and the Governor's Office, as well as CDC. That's where we've been getting all of our assistance and additional training with our staff at this time. Communication plan, tonight and as well as on Tuesday night, we're all part of our plan to provide information to the community. I want to stress that the PowerPoints are on the district website under Return to School 2020. We've been replaying these sessions on Concord TV. We've been using School Messenger to get the information out, so we will continue to do that. We also have folks that have been translating the messages into various languages of folks in our community. That's been important. So we'll continue a very robust communication plan to ensure that you get the information you need. The last slide is on athletics, and at the high school, I just want to let you know that they are out there. You can see them in the fields. It's all skill development. They have to adhere to the social distancing. The coaches are wearing masks. They check each day. They check the youngsters with various protocols, daily screening, so that the students are well to be involved in that. We're waiting for further information from NHIAA, although today I will tell you that they have moved practices and scrimmages and all that up to September 8th. They'll be allowed to have contact, but yet to determine when the first actual games will be played. So we'll keep you posted on that. And last but not least, I think I mentioned it, the Concord School Board will be meeting on August 3rd. They will be considering the options that we presented this evening. Again, they've been listening to your comments, and have been actively involved in this. They will also take information and feedback on Monday night, August 3rd, at their board meeting, which is at 7 o'clock. That will be also a remote meeting, and we'll have the information out so that you can get on the meeting and seek the link. I'm sure we'll post that on the website. So other than that, we have resources. These are some of the resources we use every day to help us make decisions. So we thought we'd post those up there for you if you had some more interest. With that, we'd like to jump right into questions, and so we're going to start with some telephone call-ins. So Jack, you want to do that?
Sure. So right now I have 3 numbers, and if it's okay, I'm going to go through all 3 at the one time. So phone number ending 0840, area code 603. If you have a question, please hit *6 to unmute yourself and ask your question. Okay, if there's no questions from 0840, I'm going to move on to 7989, area code 603. If you have a question, please hit *6 and unmute yourself and ask your question. All right, and last, phone number ending in 3222. Again, area code 603. If you have a question, please hit *6 to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question. All right, Donna, I'll turn it over to you for the online questions.
Okay, we've had a couple people ask what would happen if a student had positive symptoms or some kind of symptoms and needed to stay home, or if they contracted COVID and had to be home out of school for a period of time, would they still receive their education and support? And the answer is yes, that we would want to provide services and education to those students, and their school and their teacher would work with them on that. Matt, there's a question for you. How long are the disinfectants on surfaces required to be wet to be effective?
Great question. 10 minutes is the application. We spray it on, we let it, what they call in the industry is quell time. Let it stay for 10 minutes, and then it will dissipate and it'll do its job.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks.
Several parents have asked about the choosing of a model. So once the board makes its decisions, if there's a choice of a model, then the schools will reach out to you to ask you to make that choice. And in order to keep people from bouncing back and forth constantly between the models, we likely will set a date. We might say something like up until November 1st, make your choice. Now, obviously, if something significant happens, is something really troubling and it's just not working for you, the student, of course, your principal and your teachers are going to work with you on that. But we would ask people to make a commitment for a period of time, not the whole year, but some period of time so that we can see how things are moving forward. There's a question, wouldn't students from sending schools be considered visitors? What happens if a student at one of the sending schools tests positive? Are those sending schools putting Concord students at risk? And I'm going to send that one over to Ms. Murphy. We did talk to Dr. Noble about that just today.
Right, and if a student is diagnosed from another district, one of our sending schools, and then they obviously have a protocol where they're not, and they would again follow our protocols, which is the student is sent home with and a call is made to Health and Human Services so that they can do the appropriate tracing and a contact and tracing so that we know that if anyone was infected by that student. So I mean, that's the protocol we're going to use with everyone. And, we do have a relationship with these school districts. That is where they get their career and technical education. And so we want to honor that commitment in those contracts with those communities. But again, I want to emphasize those same protocols that we employ will be used with other districts.
One more question, then we'll see if there's any phone folks. There's been a few people that have asked whether the district was going to require parents to sign an assumption of the risk and waiver of liability relating to COVID-19 if we send our kids back to school. And someone mentioned they had signed such a thing for sports, and I know we did have such a waiver. I'm going to send this one over to Jack Dunn.
No, not at this time. We are not doing anything to do that. We are meeting with Primex, our consultant, or our insurer, and going through what those responses need to be. And we'll be publishing more information in the near future on that, but not at this time.
Do we have anyone on the phone to contact?
No, only I'm down. I went from 3 down to 2, but I do just want to comment in case people think there's a blank in there. I've had between 15 and 20 calls in the last hour and 45 minutes, and probably 4 or 5 of those have asked questions. So as far as we know, there's nothing wrong technically. I've tested it. It's just that people have not either answered or it's quiet as far as we know. So it's not that it should be a problem with what you're listening to. It's just we give a couple minutes to let people chime in. If they're either not listening or listening and didn't want to answer questions, we just moved on to the next one. So it isn't that every single person that was called on had asked a question, just for clarification. I will say this, I do have a number that dropped off and is coming back on, so I will call on that one because maybe they realized. How are you tonight? Last 4 digits, 7989. Do you have a question? I'll try one more time. 7989, phone number ending 7989, area code 603. Do you have a question? All right, 7989, I'm going to mute you again and just listen in.
We had a question about whether we're going to allow our students out in the community for experiential learning. And particularly at the high school, we have something called ELOs, extended learning opportunities, where students go out, and we have not discussed that situation yet. So I'm not sure whether that will be available to our students at this point in time. There's a question about online remote classes and whether they'll be taught synchronously, since studies have shown that students students are adapting better to the remote situation created by the pandemic when they are able to see their classmates and teachers. And I think Ms. Murphy spoke a bit about that, and we had heard concerns from our community through surveys and a hope and a wish to have more opportunities for synchronous, or that is kind of live interactions with the staff. And so there's definitely going to be an expectation for more of that and a balance, you know, a nice balance between opportunities for kids to be connecting with their staff, with their peers, and also offline, because we really don't want them to spend all day looking at the screen, but some combination of that.
So we had an interesting question with, I thought it was a great question, Alicia, that with fall coming and regular cold and flu season, if my child is homesick, are you requesting that they get tested for COVID-19 as a precaution? No, we're not suggesting that, but we are saying if your child is sick and cold and or flu, that they do stay home, running a temp. Remember, we have set a limit of 100 degrees. So if they're over 100, then they would be sent home. The other thing, though, I would suggest to families is if you're concerned about your child's illness, that I would call your family doctor or the local clinic to see what their recommendations are. They often will say, you know, have them tested or not have them tested. I think based on the symptoms that you report will be a good barometer for measuring whether they should be tested or not. Great question, though. I think a lot of parents are going to face that. One of the other questions I thought came in, I think, I'm not sure who sent it in, but it was a good question because we actually thought about how we could do that. And that was, could we have cameras and in every classroom and videotape and then send that out? And we looked at that. I mean, the expense was absolutely incredible when you think about setting up microphones, cameras for every single classroom that we have in the district. And you know, we have 4,400 students. Then, you know, you divide that out by the number of students that we have, the number of classrooms, averages in each building anywhere from 20 to 25 times 7 buildings. So you can imagine how costly that would be in terms of having students at home, but still seeing their teacher in the classroom with their lessons. But a great question, and you know, again, the expense was overwhelming.
But and that would be for the whole classroom to see everything that's going on in the classroom. The teachers all have capacity to have a microphone and camera right when their laptop, so they can make, that's how they make their videos to send home to students and can see their students through that as well.
Deb asked about, I think I'm still, yeah, Deb asked about volleyball. I don't know, Steve on the line? Steve Mello, are you on the line? Maybe not. He might be coming in at the high school time. I know that he talked about volleyball. And again, right now, all of the preparation for athletics is done outside. I know that he indicated to me that there was volleyball practice going on, but it was outside, so they weren't in the gym using the courts. So I'm not exactly sure why that wasn't listed, but Steve may come on at some point and answer that question for us. That would be great.
All right, I did have someone else chime in for the phone. So phone number ending in 8555. If you have a question, please hit *6 and unmute yourself.
How you doing, guys? I appreciate this. It's a big help. My question to you is, and forgive me, I've kind of called in and listened on another phone. Sports within the middle school and high school for the fall season, is there like a definite that we're not going to have them, or like how is it working out on you know, the sports aspect of it? I'm specifically speaking fall, and then, you know, eventually we'll work our way to winter.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, Well, that's a great question, and we've been talking a little bit about sports, and we know that the youngsters are really, really hungry to get back out on the field, right? But we haven't gotten a definite recommendation yet from NHIAA, which governs all of our middle and high school athletic programs. They are out on the fields at the high school now in drills and skills. They're not doing any contact, but and they're going through all the protocols for safety. We're waiting to hear that the latest from NHIA is that they can start some practices, scrimmages that are more contact on September 8th. They have not set the schedule yet for games. We hope to hear that within the next few weeks. I know that the ADs, the athletic directors, are anxious to hear that, but we'll keep you posted on that. We know that our students are really anxious to be out there.
I see a question, can my child with an IEP be a fully remote student and still receive in-person services, or will he need to be a hybrid fully in-person? And I want to say that we want to work with our families to set up the services that our students need. And just because a student is remote doesn't mean that they couldn't come in for a service that's in their IEP. So I think that's something to be worked out with the team and the case manager with your student.
I had a great question from a parent middle school. I'm assuming middle school, but middle schoolers being middle schoolers, which I thought was a great descriptor. You have to love middle schoolers, and she said that they push the envelope, and they'll take their masks off and all that. Well, first of all, we want to work with the youngsters and make sure that they understand why they're wearing the masks. What does that mean? That means that they're protecting those folks around them as well as protecting themselves. So that's training, and that's making sure that they have the knowledge to understand why we're asking that. But the second thing is that, we have, will there be disciplinary action? We have put into place guidance counselors, our social workers, our school psychologists to help youngsters with those challenges. And when they challenge us with behaviors, those folks are ready to be able to work with the students. We all know this is difficult. We have adults who don't feel that wearing a mask is appropriate. We understand that. But our responsibility is to provide the knowledge to help them understand why they're wearing a mask, to protect themselves, to protect their peers and their classmates, as well as their teachers.
We had a question about the hybrid group. So if can we request that our child be in the same hybrid group as someone that we're sharing childcare with? And that makes a lot of sense to us. At the point at which we find out if we would be having a hybrid model, again, the principals will reach out and you'll be asked to almost kind of register your child for a particular option, and we would look at siblings. People may want to have their siblings together. I did have a call from a parent who actually wanted her siblings on different days, and so we'll wonder about that and want you to give us information about that, and we'll also want to know if there are other circumstances. And while we can't probably promise it because there's a lot of moving parts, we certainly want to work with you on that and collaborate on that.
Go ahead.
Okay, I did have somebody else dialing in. Last four of the phone are 6352. If you have a question, please hit *6 and unmute yourself. You are unmuted. Go
Hello?
ahead. Yes, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Very good. Thanks.
I
Go ahead.
just want to say I appreciate all the time everybody in the school board has spent on all this. I can't imagine the stress and it's not going to please everybody. So I appreciate your time on all this. So my question is, and I know that there was a previous question similar to this, is that for parents that are already having a hard time financially or would like to choose for their children to go to in-person full-time, has there been conversation or discussion around giving the opportunity for maybe a class or two of each grade to be fully in person with teachers that are comfortable if the hybrid model is chosen, or has that not been a discussion?
Thank you for the question. We would love to do exactly what you just described. The problem we have is that we have to bring the kids in small groups. So when you bring a full class in, now you're talking about 22 youngsters in a class with a teacher, and we don't have the social distancing that we feel is important. The other problem that we have is that, additional space. Now we know we can use the cafeteria, we could use the gymnasium. I think Matt mentioned the outside learning areas with tents, but we don't have enough spaces to be able to do that and have small class sizes. So that's what's been the barrier for what you just described.
We had some questions about the pre-screening, the thermometers, who would do this. So maybe I can lump those together. All good questions in terms of the time it would take to do these. And we've been advised that it's a very quick process with the type of no-touch thermometers that we have available to us, that the students would not be all coming in the same entrance, because again, we're trying to keep congregation down to a very small group. So we are lucky to have a variety of doors to our buildings. And I know Mr. Cashman has been working to identify with the principals how we might use those doors if students were going to be coming in. And so we would see students broken down into very small groups to do this. It's about 3 seconds per student, I'm told. I'm also told that there's no technical expertise required and no analysis, and therefore others besides nurses can take temperatures. The cost of a simple digital thermometer that we've looked at, and I'm sure we would get it in bulk, we are probably in the $6 or $7 range, and we're fortunate to have grants to pay for those if our families need them. We feel if we're going to ask families to do this, we should make sure that this is something that's important to us.
I've seen a number of questions asked around band, chorus, some of those after school activities. I know that the music teachers are meeting, trying to establish what they can and can't do. Some band instruments are more conducive to having band and all the youngsters together, and so they're looking at different implements that will help with when you're playing the tuba or the trumpet or the whatever, and versus the student that's on a percussion. So the music staff is working on that. We're also trying to figure out how to do the chorus to keep them socially distanced by 6 feet and still have what we all experience as a choral group. So I'll tell you, they're all working on different ways that they might be able to continue with those activities that are so important to our students. And that goes along with some of the after school things like art and art club and technology, the robotics, and so all of our staff are working on those now to make sure that they follow the guidelines, and but we still have some programs for our students.
Jack has some more calls, so we're going to go to him.
Okay, phone number ending in 1798, area code 603. If you have a question, please hit *6 to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hello?
Yes, how are you tonight?
Good.
Go ahead with your question.
Okay, my question was regarding the days that the kids will be working at home. You may have covered this, but I might have missed it. I would like to know if there will be mandated instruction time on the days that the kids are working from home. In our family, I have a middle schooler and a high schooler. We found that the loose schedule without mandated class time was very hard for them to organize their work properly.
That's a great question. And I know that the teams at the middle school and high school, elementary, middle, high school are working on this. And that the days that they're home, they'll have very specific expectations. And it'll be a range of, there may be what we're calling guided practice videos that they need to participate with that their teachers and others have made to help them go through their work. They'll have assignments, so they'll be carrying things home with them as well. And it won't be all screen time, but there will be specific things, whether they're carrying home a book and they need to read and write, whether they've started a writing assignment at school and they need to continue to write. And so they're working on a variety of things that will be a range of live and offline things as well. But they're talking about schedules and how kids will be, be receiving schedules of expectations for when they're home, for sure.
So that did not sound like actual mandated from 9 to 10, you're supposed to be on the computer with your teacher. That sounds very similar to what we had in the spring, was like, here's your workload, you do it at what the time you see fit. Is that what you're saying?
I think there'll be some of that, and I think there'll also be some expectations about coming on, like for instance, and I can't speak to the specifics of the middle school and the high school, the elementary, middle, high school right now, because they're really literally working on this right now. But there could be a particular a class happening where it's an actual live class, and they're during that particular time, whether it's an advisory or whether it's a special or another kind of a class, but it's not necessary that there will be some live instruction going on every minute of that day when they're home. Yes, I expect that will be the case, that there will not be a live instruction going on all day beamed from school.
Right, but the expectation will be that when they do it, it's mandatory, because one of the challenges we had is a lot of the Google Meetups were called optional last spring, and because they were labeled optional, my kids did not participate.
Oh yes, I hear what you're saying. Yeah. Yes, I hear what you're saying. There is the conversation is that no, they are not optional. They are very specific expectations for the students in terms of work to be done and daily attendance for those expectations. So I've heard the same thing from the staff talking about the optional business not being the best approach, just as you said, with students not necessarily coming because it was presented to them as being optional, and that will not be the case.
Okay, and I have one more follow-up question. How can students access guidance counselors while during this whole situation, since they'll probably be staying kind of in one room during the day?
So that's a great question, and I know again they're working on that. So during the day, the guidance counselors are designated for various, a specific grade level, and they will be making it hopefully very obvious about how they can be accessed and how they'll connect with students. And when they're not, or for the remote students or for the students on the other days, they will have designated times. The parents can reach out to them, students can reach out to them, but they will also be reaching out to students. I'm sure they'll be running groups and individual sessions as well. So that's a work in progress, but there will be, we take that very seriously. The good news is there are additional supports and services available this year. And so we'll be working really hard to make sure that kids are connected with the right counselor and the right services. I know that's a very vague answer, but I don't have a particular schedules at this point, but that's something very important, and I'm really glad for you to raise it at this point.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for the information.
Okay, right now it's 7:05. We're going to take a 5-minute break to start the high school presentation. Anybody that is dialed in and online, I've kept your number in order of who is up next if you want to stay logged on. And anybody else that wants to come on for the high school, by all means, but we'll work in that order. But we will come back on at 7:10, and just going to pause here for a few minutes. Thank you.
There. Okay. Well, good evening. This is Kathleen Murphy, the interim superintendent of schools for the district. Welcome and thank you for participating in our parent forum. This is our final forum. We had one on Tuesday night. We also had this evening. So I appreciate everyone's participation. Joining us this evening will be Assistant Superintendent Donna Pally and Facilities Director Matt Cashman. Also assisting us tonight will be our Business Administrator, Jack Dunn, as well as our Administrative Assistant, Lyndon Jackett. So appreciate everyone's help. Also listening tonight on this forum, and this is particularly devoted to high school, will be our members of the Concord School Board. They're most interested in hearing your thoughts, your suggestions, and your questions. Also joining us this evening will be building administrators, the principals and assistant principals, so that they can also hear your questions and concerns. So I appreciate everyone and their participation. Before we begin tonight, just a quick little bit of information. We have a Q&A section on this platform. You have questions, questions or comments, please write them in the Q&A. We also are accepting calls via phone, and we will take questions on the phone. So if you have them, please phone in, and we'll answer the best we can. I'm going to ask that in the question section that you, if you're phoning them in, that you limit your questions to a couple of minutes, 2 minutes and one question. We've had as high as 160 on the call this evening, so we want to be able to give everyone a chance to ask their questions, and we are attempting to answer questions. There's been some questions about, well, you know, my question didn't get answered. We will save all of the questions that are posed in our question and answer, and we'll devote the next few days in developing a Q&A that we'll post on the website. So the questions that you ask, we'll try to provide answers for that, and you will be able to find that on the district website under Return to School 2020. So without any further ado, because I really do want to get started, we're going to do a very brief presentation about the plan and the plan that we are looking at and seeking your input on, and we'll have that about 15 minutes and then open it up for reviewing the questions and taking the calls. So I'll begin with our first slide, if I could, and that is the guiding principles for back to school. These are the basic tenets that we use to develop the plan. I'm not going to go through them. Please take time if you wish and look at our PowerPoint that's posted on the website to go over that. But those are the principles that drove us. We also conducted in June and July surveys. We were really pleased with the results of that. We had over 1,000 families in June and close to 3,000 in the July survey. And we also had students and staff members who participated. And I think you should know that the feedback that we received from those surveys was what helped to inform our planning. In planning, we looked at 3 teaching and learning models for our new school year. That's fully remote, fully in person, and a hybrid combination model for our students. In the full in-person model, that one was particularly challenging to us because of the restrictions that we have relative to distancing, 6 feet distancing between students. That's been recommended to us by everyone. And when you take 20, 22, 25 students in a classroom and you can only put 8 to 12 students in a class, and you have to remember you have a teacher and you may have some support personnel in that classroom, we're not able to bring all students back and put them in the classroom. So that has been a challenge for us. Some people suggested that perhaps we go off campus and choose a site that would be available. And we have looked at that and talked to some folks that had real estate that might be an option, but the concerns were around supervising those sites, staffing those sites, including nursing services as well as our support services. And we just didn't feel that it would be practical to have youngsters off campus in various sites throughout the city. We think that we can bring students in because we know that we have somewhere between 20 and 25% of our students who may opt for the full remote learning, and that will impact us in terms of reducing the number of students that could opt for our face-to-face in school model. The third model that we chose was the combination model, the hybrid. Basically, that is broken up into two groups. As I said to you, we have average class size of 20. You break it up, you have two groups, 10 each. We would be able to social distance those students. So Group A would be attend on Monday and Thursday. Group B would attend on Tuesday and Friday. Lots of folks had said, well, why don't you do Monday, Tuesday, be consistent with Group A? We were concerned that the Group B would be waiting until Thursday before they had any face-to-face time. And so as a result of that advice that we received from teachers and from our administrators, we thought it would be better to do a Monday, Thursday, and a Tuesday, Friday breakout for that hybrid model. On the days that the youngsters aren't face-to-face, they will be have the following day. Let's say you're Group A, Monday you're with your teacher, Tuesday you will have activities that you will have at home. Some of those will be on remote with perhaps the music teacher, or it could be the librarian who does literary activities, computer teacher. We have science activities that are scheduled for the youngsters those days. We also would do their class meetings as well as advisory groups and various activities. And there will be some assignments that the teacher gave them from Monday to do on Tuesday. So that's how we would address the Tuesday day that the youngsters are home. Wednesdays are remote for everyone. Those will involve some small group activities. Those will be meetings, live meetings with the students, small group instruction and tutoring for students in math and reading, and other on and offline assignments. We have heard a lot concerning our vulnerable students, our students that may have an IEP or on a 504, where we have specific responsibilities to address their learning. We have built in so that they may receive additional time. This would be time that they would work with their special education teachers in addition to the group assignment, whether it was Group A or Group B. So I know that many families are concerned about meeting the IEP requirements. We feel in many cases we can do that by bringing those youngsters in to receive those specialized instructions. We've also had questions from parents. Well, how are we going to know which group they're in? And we've left that duty in the hands of our building administrators, who will do the assignments of whether it's Group A or Group B. The next one is around our masks. We are asking students and staff, and they will be required to wear masks while in the building. We recognize and acknowledge that some students may not be able to wear masks, and we will have to develop some accommodations for those youngsters. Younger students, on advice from our medical consultant, preschool and primary age, that's kindergarten 1 and 2, will not be asked to wear our masks all day. We will ask that they wear them on the buses and that they wear them when they're entering and exiting classrooms. Students throughout the day will be given mask breaks just to be able to either be outside or be in an area where they, in socially distance, where they may be able to take off those masks. And we're asking parents to help us out with that and working with your children to get ready for school by practicing wearing of their masks.
Class
And Matt?
sizes, yes. So taking a look at inside the classrooms, we're looking at anywhere from 8 to 12 students while we maintain the 6-foot recommended distances. We're also looking at assigning permanent seats We're going to work on limiting the ability to share materials and supplies in the school. We're working with principals and head custodians to create pathways through the building to provide as little amount of mixing of groups as possible. We're excited about the use of tents. We're going to have 4 tents at every school building to start. We're going to encourage as much as possible outside learning. We're also not planning on holding any large group meetings or events.
We're recommending to the school board a modification of the school calendar. This will enable our teachers and staff to prepare for all of the activities, the planning, the preparation that they're going to need to do as they develop their lessons for face-to-face, or whether they develop their lessons for remote. It could be both. At any point in the year, based on the data that we receive, and I'm going to go over that in the next slide, we may have to pivot from one model to another. So we need our teachers and our staff to be prepared for that. And I'm asking to follow the governor's advice, where he asked for 3 additional days for teachers to be able to prepare for those lessons. The many questions are asked. Well, how do you know you're going to pivot, or how do you know what combination of learning models to use? And so we have on a daily basis, we have checked on the status of COVID-19 in Concord as well as in New Hampshire, watching for any outbreaks, receiving notifications from Health and Human Services. I think I mentioned earlier, and we've mentioned throughout the evening, that we've been so fortunate to have the advice of Dr. James Noble, infectious disease doctor from over at the Concord Hospital, who has been meeting with us on a regular basis to provide guidance. And again, we receive state and federal guidance via CDC and the Office of the Department of Public Health in order to help us decide what plan will be the best for our students in Concord. Donna?
No matter what age student, we're talking about our youngest student through our high school students and our adults. We know we've all been through a period of time and continue to be in a period of time that's quite traumatic. We know that the first weeks of school and really all through the year, whether we're in person together or remote, will include a heavy focus on working with our students around their social emotional well-being. There will be an emphasis on those core importance of building relationships, classroom community, and introducing and modeling new expectations. This is a situation where last spring, our teachers, by and large, unless it was a quarter high school course, knew their students. In this case, we potentially have students who have not met their teachers, so we're in a difficult situation in that regard. And so everyone is heightened, and everyone is working on making sure that we put into place opportunities for those connections to be built. And that is why things like the expectations for students to participate this fall will be quite different than last spring, which was emergency teaching and learning, and it wasn't perfect. In this case, we've had so much feedback to let us know that we need to really have those connections with our students, and that's going to be a priority. Back to school events, transitions, freshman orientation. I know Mr. Reardon is here and we'll speak about this probably in a bit, but there's a freshman orientation planned. I'm sure there'll be orientations for new students and those sorts of things. Student services, we have many students who receive services based on their IEPs. We have students who are English learners who receive Title I services and more. And we know that we need to make sure we provide those services in a way that's going to make sense for our students. We hope to offer those students both at home, I'm sorry, both remotely at home and in person. We are not going to in person go into people's homes, but we will offer them both remotely and at school. And we're working closely with partners in the community. We're working closely with, as people have been saying over and over, with our medical community to make sure we understand exactly the PPE that's needed for some students and some, for instance, educational assistants. Mr. Cashman's working with his plexiglass petitions that need to go in certain places. And so we do have a mighty group of folks, clinical folks and others, who are focusing on how these services will be done. And families will be connecting with their case managers and their teams over the course of this summer. We have about 750 students with IEPs, so those teams are working to contact families, and that's true at the high school too. Our technology situation continues to be similar to the spring. Our students at the high school have one-to-one devices. These students are slated to, in the fall, to be getting new devices at some point in the fall. We'll be having a clear direction on how students will be able to pick up their technology at school. We'll support those who need them to be brought to them, of course. We have a help desk that's set up, available remotely and in person, that ran all spring, and it will continue to run in the fall. And we've heard from a lot of families, and high school families as well, that you would like more information about, what is this Google Classroom, and how do I know what's going on with my student, and how can I get in and see what they're doing and not doing. And we're going to be making sure to pay attention to that. There'll be technology training later in the summer and into the fall. And we're also continuing to support our families who need help with internet connectivity. In the fall, for the high school, juniors will be expected to take the SAT. This is a statewide assessment, which is done in conjunction with the College Board. The SAT is not available remotely at this point. It is a paper and pencil test.
Many of you have asked about the Regional Technical Center, and as many of you know, we work with our regional partners in 9 schools to develop a plan for our youngsters. Many parents want to know, will those youngsters coming from other school districts have to follow the protocols established by the Concord School District? And the answer is yes. We have said that we wanted masks to be worn, we wanted social distancing, we wanted hand washing and all of those pieces to it, and we expect that the students who attend our schools to follow the same protocol. I'm not sure that Mr. Rothenberg is on the phone. Is he on?
If you could pause for a second and see. Steve, I did send the link. If you have the ability to chime in, please unmute yourself, and if you can see it, and if not, I will work to get that access to you for the Q&A section. Maybe not, so I'll let you continue, Kathleen, and I'll work to get him into that.
So I guess the final couple of notes about the technical center is that they do plan on being open every day to support all of the schedules for those 9 sending schools, as well as the schedules to support our Concord students, so the lab will be opened. We know that, it's pretty clear that it's a very hands-on program, project-orientated, and so the distance learning was a struggle for them last year. Any of it that was done, students were able to access the program. So we want to continue that face-to-face at the Regional Technical Center.
We're going to talk a little bit about screening procedures at home and then move along to screening procedures at school. We're asking parents and guardians to screen your children daily for any risk factors associated with COVID. We will provide a checklist from the district. We're also going to be, along with checking temperatures at school, we're going to be providing thermometers to any families in need. If a child has a temperature of 100 degrees or above, we ask that they remain home and participate in remote learning. And if a student is exposed to COVID-19, the student must stay home and follow the guidelines before they return. We're going to move into screening procedures at school. Every staff member and student will be screened before entering the school building. Each school will have the no-touch thermometers. All students and staff will be screened for fever before entering the building. Again, anyone with a temperature of 100 degrees or more must remain at home. If a student has 100 degrees or above, they'll be returned in a private vehicle. As always, we encourage hand washing and hand sanitizing. We do this upon entering the building, when using the bathroom, before and after snack and lunch times. Also, if they return in from the playground, we ask that they hand wash and sanitize. We will be providing hand sanitizing stations in the doorways of every classroom in the school. On disinfecting and cleaning protocols, we're going to be cleaning classrooms every single day. However, on Wednesdays, we are going to dedicate that to a deep cleaning, as we won't have many kids in school that day. We also have electrostatic sprayers throughout the district. We have backups to that as well. It helps us spray disinfectant, and the chemicals we use are approved by the CDC. We will also have spray bottles and disinfectant with disinfectant and rags in all classrooms. And we're looking to speak to the high school and middle school students and staff to encourage them to wipe down desks before leaving the classroom. Custodial schedules will be shifted and adjusted based on the model that we adopt. We talked a little bit on the last slide about disinfectants. We have 3 disinfectants listed here. They are all approved by the CDC to fight against COVID. I also will be providing SDS sheets on our website and at the schools as well, so people can see the products that we're using. We want to talk a little bit about visitors and meetings. So other than in an emergency, visitors and vendors will not be allowed to enter our buildings. We're also going to require that parent meetings be held remotely. And when we first get started, we're also, in the effort to be safe, not going to allow volunteers in our buildings. The next slides, we have 3 of them, cover specific responses. They cover responses to COVID-like symptoms if they occur or are screened at the school. We also have protocol that covers if there's an actual case at the school. We also have a protocol if there is a diagnosis of COVID. And there's certain protocols we introduce public health officials, we notify them right away. They notify the teachers, and then we follow the protocols listed in front of you on the slide. When an individual in the school is confirmed with COVID-19, there's 3 criteria. We have to wait up to 10 days have passed since that first symptom has appeared, and wait at least 24 hours since the last fever has occurred after fever reducing meds and after the symptoms have improved. Now we'll talk a little bit about air filtration and air handling in our buildings. 3 years ago, we brought in Train Air Systems to come in and change all filters in all 7 schools, which represents over 1,000 filters in the district every single quarter. It's a really big move to improve air quality. We also work with Train and Siemens, our building automation control company, that will allow us to bring in 100% of the outside air. We're also working with those 2 companies along with the mechanical engineers of record that have designed these mechanical systems in our schools to further develop and follow protocol. We're also planning on opening windows when possible and when needed.
Our food service will look a little bit different this time. We won't be wanting large groups in the cafeteria and the student center. And so we will have students eating in much smaller groups, to some extent outside, which is always the safest spot. We'll be offering breakfast and lunch as usual, but these will be grab and go options. And we are hoping and expecting to deliver food into the community. We are waiting for those waivers from the federal and state government. And we actually met today with our food service director and Dr. Noble to talk about protocols that our food service staff will be using.
We've been very appreciative of the response from parents to help us out with transportation. Although this isn't a huge issue at the high school, a number of students drive every day and to school, but for those students who don't have that opportunity, we were thankful that parents will help us with that. The issues really are around 77 passenger bus where you can only seat 26 students, and because we're going to ask only one student per seat. And the seats will be assigned and permanent. We will ask that face masks be used on the buses. They will be required. And again, in a way to keep the airflow in a bus, we will have the windows open when it's permissible given the weather. Buses will be cleaned and sanitized daily along with between every run. So when they finish the high school run, they will clean before they pick up middle and elementary as the runs go. The one thing that's disappointing, but I think, again, a way to protect is there will be no field trips that require busing, field trips that leave the city. We will let, obviously, there are walking trips and those are permissible. I got muted for some reason. I am very pleased with the support and the consultation that we've had with Dr. Noble from the Concord Hospital, who is in charge of infection prevention. And he has been meeting with us regularly. It's just been a great help to us. We also, I'm pleased with all the support that we got from our staff and our leadership team. Our principals, assistant principals have been working on this day and night, so that I appreciate that. Our district nurses have been meeting with folks from public health and getting the latest weekly updates, along with the updates that I receive and Matt and Donna receive from the Department of Ed, as well as the governor's office and the rules from CDC. So we're getting plenty of information to help guide us, and we're all very appreciative of that. The last is the communication plan. This is the last of, I think this is the 6th session we've had, and it's part of our communication plan. But there is information on our district website. If you go to the district website under Return to School 2020, you'll see the PowerPoints and information on that. If you want more information, we've been using social media. Our Concord TV will be streaming these sessions for you for review. And again, we'll be working with the community and getting messages out. We've also had messages translated so that we can provide for the various languages in our community. Athletics at the high school, you need to know, and I'm sure many of you do, that we are having athletic practice, that's skill development right now. There's no contact, but the students are attending every day, practicing those skills and drills. We are awaiting NHAA recommendations, although they did send some out today, indicating that they would wait until September 8th before there were any formal, practices with scrimmages and any contact. They have not released any details relative to whether the schedule of games and competition will begin. We do not have that yet, so there's still a lot to be said around athletics and after-school activities that will come up a lot: band, chorus, art club, robotics. All of those coaches and advisors for those groups are trying to put together some plans so how they can provide those things for the students. Trust me, the students are really hungry. They want to get back into those competitions and those clubs and those enrichment activities that they so love. So we'll have more of that. I think Steve's on the call with us, Steve Mello, the AD. So if there's questions particular to this, we'll ask Steve to comment. And finally, I think as next steps, and just in closing, The board has been sitting in on all of these meetings to hear what you had to say and to hear your questions and to better understand your needs. They will consider the options on August 3rd at their regularly scheduled monthly meeting at 7 o'clock. The information on that link will be posted for you to if you want to tune in. There'll also be an opportunity for you to call in with additional comments or questions, and they will have that as they have an open mic session following a brief presentation. So hopefully that will be done on August 3rd, and that's really important. I think that parents have indicated to us a desire to know what we're going to do so that they can make plans as a family relative to schooling, learning, care for their children. So with that said, I'll mention resources that these are some of the resources that we use to help us with the work that we do every day on this plan. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Jack. I think he's going to take some calls that came in over the phone line. So Jack, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. I have 3 phone calls there. I will hit those 3, and if it's okay, before we hit online questions, Steve Rothenberg is also on the line. So we will go back to that slide and then if there's any CRTC questions, we focus on those, as that's all right. So let me first hit phone number ending in 1971, area code 603. If you have a question, please hit *6 to unmute yourself and ask your question. I guess they didn't like being called on, they left. But maybe, we'll see. Okay, phone number ending in 3837, area code 603. If you hit *6, it'll unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, hello. I actually had a couple of questions. My first is, what is going to be communicated to teachers in terms of what their academic expectations should be for this year? 100% of what they usually do, 50%? And then, hello? Oh,
Yep,
did you want me to wait on the second one? Yes,
Yeah,
can you hear me?
if you could, wait for the second one. Yep, you there? You're still there, right?
Yeah, sure. I'll wait for the
Sure.
second one. Yep.
Great. Okay. What we'll do is, who do you want Mike on that? Okay. Mike Reardon, if you could unmute yourself and answer that question if you heard it.
You know, we're not going to be able to do everything this fall that we normally do. I've communicated that to the teaching staff that I've had a chance to speak with so far. We are going to be foregrounding the social, emotional well-being of the kids, but also working to, if we're in a hybrid model, a pretty robust curriculum. We're going to make a special effort to make sure that there is a close connection between what goes on in the in-class teaching, the traditional mode of teaching, and an organic connection with what goes on in the remote days. So on Monday, you've got a 90-minute period, and we want the teachers to spend the last 10 or 15 minutes preparing the kids for their remote learning the following day. And in the same sense, the stuff that they do remotely on Tuesday would feed into what's going on Wednesday, not on Wednesday, but on Thursday. So, you know, to put a percentage on that is difficult, but I think it's fair to say that it's going to be somewhat less than we've normally been able to do.
Okay. Do you want to ask your next question or a follow-up?
Yeah, yes, if you don't mind. No, that's fine. I'll accept that. And then the other question I had was, is there going to be some effort to make more parking available for students for driving in order to alleviate they want to get kids off the bus? That's one way we might be able to help. And is there going to be more parking available for students?
Yeah, that's a good question, because we're concerned with, obviously we've been asking parents to drop their kids off. In high school, a lot of kids already drive themselves. one of the things, if we see that there's a problem, I think we're going to be reaching out to the town, to the city, to see if we can do more on-street parking. But beyond that, there's not a lot of options. I mean, there's a state hospital, but you know, except for special events like graduation, I think they've been reluctant to open up that as a possibility. But the one thing I'll guarantee you is that if finding parking spaces to be in school is a problem, we'll make every effort to find additional spaces. It's not easy.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. We appreciate it. All right, I muted him. Okay. I also have, and let me just verify, if Mr. Rothenberg, you could hit *6 and unmute yourself. Steve, you there?
Hi, Jack, I'm here.
Great. I'm just going to have you hold right there. And Mr. Mello, I believe you're on. If you could hit *6 and unmute yourself. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Jack.
Great. All right, perfect. So I'm going to hit this last phone number with a question, and then we'll go into the topics of the CRTC and athletics. Okay. So phone number ending in 1798. If you have a question, please hit *6 and unmute yourself. Okay. If there's nothing there, we're going to move on. Kathleen, I think you mentioned there was a question about volleyball. Do you want to chime in on that and let Steve be able to answer that?
There you go. Thanks, Jack. Steve, a parent asked about volleyball. Can you update us on the status of that? I'm not sure it was listed in our screenshot on that particular when we talked about athletics. So could you update us on the? There it is. There it is. We didn't have volleyball. Maybe you could fill us in on that.
Yeah, as you know, Kathleen, we have a very detailed plan that is obviously doesn't fit on your slide. Volleyball currently is training outside, but volleyball is the only sport that is played indoors, and at some point they will move indoors. Obviously, the gym is a big space. They would be able to space accordingly before the competition starts, but obviously once volleyball starts, volleyball is volleyball. Volleyball, as well as all the other sports that are offered in the fall at Concord High, have been approved by the governor's reopening task force to be played. We have taken a slow, methodical approach, a careful approach, thus volleyball outside. And to be honest, the girls seem to enjoy being outside in the sun. But those recommendations were vetted by the Department of Health and Human Services, which has, specialists, doctors, and so forth that have vetted these recommendations. Everything we do fits inside of those recommendations. So each sport, we will have a plan to conduct it as safely as possible. And that plan is evolving every day. And anybody that wants to contact me directly to ask me any questions, I'm always happy to respond to any and all inquiries.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steve. And if I could, I want to move to the CRTC slide. And then Mr. Rothenberg is on the line. So Donna has some questions from people that have typed in, so I'll let her.
We had a couple questions. My child was going to be starting the health science program at CRTC this year, and we need to know how remote only would work as well as what the other options are. So that was a question. There was a question just in general about how will CRTC be run. This is a student who's a senior from a sending school. And while you answer those, I'll check to see if there are any other CRTC questions that have come in.
Yeah. So this is Steve Rothenberg. Good evening, everybody. Well, let's take the second question, how it will be run. So we've sort of maintained, one of the challenges CRTC faces is that the state did not put out guidelines on how a sending school, home receiving school model would work. So we've had to navigate 9 different sending schools and 9 different schedules. So we've maintained one sort of simple philosophy at this stage, that we're open every day. Does that mean kids come every day? No. It just means that to be flexible, we're being open every day for our regular schedule. So the student asking the question, I'm a year 2 student, what is it going to look like? I can't specifically say exactly what your week will look like, but I can assure you that if this plan gets approved by the school board, we'll be open numerous days per week to you, as well as we're exploring how we can offer additional lab time for students to do projects, whether they're in health science or in auto tech or cosmetology or theater and film. The second question about health science being all remote, I want to answer that I can't give you an exact answer. Right now, our faculty is working hard to develop a model that deals with all remote. There are certain programs that just don't lend themselves to being all remote, automotive, construction trades, and there's other programs that do lend themselves to being more remote. And so we're working on that over the next week or 2 to clarify that situation.
Okay, thanks, Steve. That's all. For phone numbers, that's all I have.
Okay, so we'll go back to questions, and I see, how does this affect band camp for the band kids? Thanks for that question, Kathy. I happen to know, because I had a conversation today about band camp, and I know that Mr. Cohen and Ms. Cowett have a very specific plan that they'll be reaching out with to the band camp kiddos, and it involves starting to practice the marching and at 6 feet distances with perhaps drums and not other instruments yet, until they get more advice about those other instruments. But they do have a plan. They are planning to have band camp. There have been several questions about the choice of the Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday. Several people have pointed out the Monday, an idea of a sort of an AA with a Wednesday out and then a BB. So a Monday, Tuesday group and a Thursday, Friday. And why did we choose that particular model? We actually started with that model, the Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday model. We had some concerns about the long distance from the Tuesday all the way back to the Monday again. It seemed like a long wait. So we shared all the potential options with our medical advisor to understand whether any of them were safer than others in terms of any kind of cleaning issues. And he told us no, that they had no particular advantage one versus the other. And so we went with the one that provided our students with a closer in contact with their teachers.
So one of the questions that I see up is were teachers and staff surveyed? Can they work remotely? Well, first of all, our teachers were surveyed, our staff was surveyed, and that was back in June. We have in excess of over 100 folks working with us to develop the plan, so they've had opportunities to provide input, and now many of them are working in their particular buildings, helping the leadership team in each of the buildings develop the individual plans that could occur in the building. Can they opt to work remotely? Well, remember now, we have students that will choose to do the hybrid, come in, meet with their teachers twice a week, do some work at home. But we also have students that we recognize that will choose to have a remote only. So we have teachers that have already indicated to us a willingness to work and to opt to work remotely. And so that right now we're trying to partner up those teachers who desire to work remotely for various reasons with those students who desire to stay home and work remotely, so that they will have that teacher. As well as the students that opt for the hybrid. So that's our next step in this process for us to do the work.
Okay, I have a, nope, sorry, they logged off, so, Donna.
can I continue? We've had a lot of questions around the scheduling that occurs at the high school, and Mr. Reardon is on our phone, and I'd ask him to speak to the 4x4 so that people understand it. And given the circumstances that we're in, and his team was trying to determine the best delivery of instruction. So I'm going to let Mike give us some particulars on that, if he would.
Sure. I appreciate the opportunity to do that because, to speak frankly, I understand that to change the master schedule in the middle of the summer is probably freaking out a lot of people. I'm just saying that frankly. So why do we do it? To not do it would have left us in a situation, and more significantly, left our students in a situation where they had 7 or 8 classes that they were doing at least 2 or 3 days a week if they were in the hybrid remotely, and that they were doing every day if they were in full remote. That, in speaking for myself, is an untenable and certainly an unhealthy situation. It leaves kids in a position where they're essentially sitting in front of a screen all day. So the 4x4 means that they're still taking their same number of classes for basically the same number of time, the same amount of time over the course of a full year. However, they're only taking half of them at a time. So for just about all of our kids, they'll in the fall semester, and we all fervently hope we'll be back to reality, and I should say normality, in the spring. But in the fall, the kids will be taking 3 or 4 classes. So that is a way of creating a much better, more realistic, more humane focus for those kids. And where they're not thinking about 7 or 8 classes at a time, they're doing, as I said, 3 or 4. So although the change to do that is not easy, any big change like this, even small changes, are fraught with challenges. But we felt it was worth doing just for that purpose. And along with going to a hybrid schedule where we have half the kids at a time, that created the safety factor along with the academic factor, a tighter focused academic factor. So that's really behind it. And the other thing I would point out about the schedule, and I know there's a lot of questions, so I will stop. But yeah, there's going to be 3 remote days, but one of those days is going to be the Wednesday. The teachers will be checking in for about half an hour, 40 minutes with their kids for each class. So there's going to be work going on directly in that format. And the other 2 remote days, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier to another question, are going to be very closely, I like to use the adverb organically connected to what goes on in class. So Monday's in class for 90 minutes. Then you've got a half hour to an hour's work, depending on how fast a student can work through it, that's intimately connected to what went on Monday. And in turn, what goes on the remote day will be connected to what goes on in the next in-class session. So A, this is not perfect, but B, we feel strongly that it's preferable.
Thanks, Mike. I think there have been a lot of questions on that, and it was great to hear about the work that you're doing. So I appreciate you hanging in with us tonight. I want to talk a little bit about, kind of follow up on what Michael said. There's been a lot of, we all know how important relationships are. That is really the basic foundation for the work that we do every single day as teachers, as educators, and whatever role we have in the school business. It can be an assistant, a support person, or one of our ed assistants, our teachers. Those relationships that we build with youngsters are critical. Back in the spring, teachers had to pivot on a dime to get remote learning. They hadn't really had the preparation and the training that many of us feel that was important in order for them to do the face-to-face instruction. And so I want to be clear with the families that in the hybrid where the youngsters are home days doing their work at home, as well as the students that are choosing to be remote learners for the entire time, however long that lasts, that there's an expectation in this district that we will have face-to-face. How else will we establish those critical relationships that youngsters have with their teachers? And all of us, every single one of us can remember our teachers and the people that really had a great influence. We do not want to lose that. That is so critical to the work that we do. So there is an expectation that teachers will be face-to-face in a synchronous way to provide instruction to our students. And I'm talking about all levels. I know this is a high school session, but this applies to our elementary, to our preschool. Let's not forget our littles, and then preschool, elementary, and our middle and high school students. So that's going to be work that our administrators will be working on in terms of accountability, and also starting this month, the month of August. We're not quite there yet, but we intend to do really ratchet up our training for our staff so that they have the confidence and the skills to be able to do that synchronous learning, that face-to-face learning that is so important. So that question comes up a lot throughout the evening tonight, so I wanted to address it. Thanks. Jack, do you have another phone message there?
I do. So phone number ending in 2720, area code 603. If you had a question, please hit *6 to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question. One more time, 2720, phone number ending 2720, area code 603. If you have a question, hit *6 to unmute yourself and ask your question. Oh, all right, we'll move on to the online typed questions. Kathleen?
Button. There we go. Thank you. Folks have asked about the decision and when we can expect a decision. As I said earlier, the school board very much has it on their agenda for their August 3rd meeting. So they are anticipating that they will make a decision about the model that will be employed in the Concord School District on August 3rd. We need and we acknowledge that families need time to make plans to be able to decide what would be the best model for their youngster. Remember, you can choose a full-time remote or the hybrid. We don't see us returning full-time with everybody in school at this point. You know, it'd be awful nice if we hear come the winter that there's a vaccine and we can get everybody back in. But right now we're saying that the remote option is available full-time as well as the hybrid. But the board will decide on Monday night what they would like to do relative to that. There's one other question. I think you want to go, Dawn, and want to take it.
Sure. There's been a question about Deerfield students. Will all the Deerfield students come on the same days or will they come on different days? And that's something we're going to have to work very closely with Deerfield about because there are potential transportation issues about how many students they can transport to Concord or how many students will end up driving themselves or getting rides with families. So we'll work with Deerfield. There was a question about, you know, who's responsible for the transportation, and that is something Deerfield does. So we will certainly work with them, and I know Mr. Reardon's aware of that particular question, and we'll be reaching out as well. Is the district using community health metrics to determine in-person or not? Yes, if you look at the end of our resources here, our presentation, you'll see a couple of links to some resources that I know I look at pretty much every day. Those are those metrics, and they show us where we are in our community, in our county, in our state, and so we're watching those carefully, and we're fortunate to have help both from Dr. Chan to understand those as well as Dr. Noble. There were questions about what would happen if a student was home ill, and certainly we want to make every effort to continue that students, if they're able to participate, have them continue to participate remotely, for instance, if they had been coming in for certain classes through a different model, assuming that we have a different model. And so certainly, yes, we would want to continue their education, absolutely. How can the seniors take the SATs they didn't take last year? Yeah, that's right. So they were juniors last year. It was canceled. The SAT, the College Board is right now scheduling the normal weekend type sessions. Concord High actually is a site to take the SATs, and right now there's one I know at the end of August, and I suspect they're in the fall as well. That's in the College Board's purview to make sure that that's still going to be offered. But if it is, we want our students to be able to have that experience that they need. Jack, do you have any questions coming on? Okay, back to Kathleen.
Muting. We had, as we get closer to the end tonight, we want to try to get some questions in. And one of the questions was about the youngsters who choose full remote, will they still be eligible to play sports? Hey, Steve, are you still with us? Because we've talked about this.
Steve Mello.
Yep, Steve Mello, you still on? Yeah, so Steve, you want to answer that? Can a student who chooses full remote, can they still be eligible to play sports?
Absolutely. It wouldn't be any different than a homeschooler, or we have students that attend non-public schools that live in Concord that also participate in our program. So the question is absolutely happy to have them.
If I'm home, how do I get to school?
Kathleen, we're hoping, this obviously has not been finalized, but we're hoping to have a midday bus that can accomplish two things. One, for kids who have finished their classes for the day, get them out of the building. And then on the way back, pick up kids who, both kids who are on their remote day or kids who are in full remote mode but want to play sports, get them back to the school.
Great. Great, thank you. Thank Mike, thanks Steve. So a parent asked about different types of masks that can be used. We've been talking about that. We have talked about, of course, the regular masks. We also talked with masks that had plastic inserts that you could see through, so that when, they were doing specialized instruction, the teachers could see children's mouths moving and all that as part of instruction, especially for youngsters who may be receiving services. So we are open to masks. I think the question was around vented masks, and absolutely, I've seen those masks used by some youngsters who may have particular issues around breathing. One more question for our principal up at the high school. Michael, one more time here. Can you talk to us about those very important events that seniors have, the graduations, their proms, those are memories that, you stay with you. So,
okay.
Can you help us with that?
Sure. I can help you with that if someone will help us and make sure this isn't going on at the end of next semester. First of all, I couldn't agree with Kathleen more that it borders on the traumatic for 17 and 18-year-olds to lose out on experiences they've seen all of their older peers, brothers and sisters and so forth go through throughout their lives. And all of a sudden they get up there and because of situations beyond their control, they can't do that. So, a lot of the answer to this question is contingent upon what the virus situation is that we would be experiencing in the spring. But aside from that, I would just point out to what the school did in regard to graduation this just a couple of months ago, that we're going to use all of our imagination and our creativity to find, if we're still in this situation, and God, I hope we're not, in the spring, we will try to find some alternatives to make some type of an experience for those kids. But the best thing we can do is just use our willpower and our prayer to put us in a position where that's a moot point and we can get back to normality.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. As we get close to finishing up here, I just want to remind everyone that we saved all of the questions in the Q&A so that we can develop a FAQ, a fact and information sheet for that will be posted on our website to answer questions. We know that we may not have gotten to every single question over the last 3 hours tonight, but we will make every effort to respond. We've actually been responding to emails that are being sent to our office or that are sent through the Concord info at sau.org. That number of people have been sending them. We've been working, trying to respond to the folks and answer their questions because we think that this communication is critically important and we need your help. We can't do this. We can't get kids in some learning mode without your help. So we appreciate all the participation and the questions and the comments that have been made tonight. I particularly, this is, like I said, this is our 6th session. There were a number of people that helped make this happen. Yes, we had a few technology glitches and I always felt bad about that, but I think we made some adjustments so that we could better handle it. And so I appreciate your patience with us, and please don't hesitate to contact us and reach out to us. That's what we're here for. And actually we take great pride in being able to support our families and especially our students. So thanks to everybody. Donna, Matt, you were fabulous. I don't know, I'm going to call Jack our disc jockey because he's been like on 2 screens and telephones. And so I appreciate that. Lyndon, thank you for monitoring some of the messages coming in. School board, I hope this was helpful to you to hear the messages. And I want to thank everybody. It's been great and we appreciate your support so much. So I'd say good night to everyone and thank you.
Thank you.